And we are live. Guys, how you doing?
How's it going, Caleb?
Doing good.
What's up, buddy? Sorry for being late.
It's all good. People need to have what is it, low time preference? What's one that's more patience? I always get confused.
Low time preference.
People need to have more low time preference and wait for this good shit.
That's my policy. That's why I'm always late for whatever time I say that King Pill is going to start. You can always guarantee it's going to be at least 15, maybe 45 minutes late.
how else do you weed out the normies?
Exactly.
Yeah. I started doing this on Twitter now. I'll post a deliberate Quinn's tweet or meme just to get rid of people. I deliberately post Quinn's. I posted you guys know what those Sigma memes are? The Sigma grind set?
Yeah.
I post my dad was taking some ZQL to go to bed, and I was down here pre-workout to go work out. And I said, Dad, take ZQL, I take pre-workout. Train while the sheep sleep. # Sigma grind. And I lost like 5 followers. I'm like, yes, that's what I want to get rid of.
Yeah. You got to cull the herd every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want quantity. I want quality.
Exactly.
Hold up. People, I posted on Twitter because I got Thomas DeLorenzo coming on October 18th, and I asked people to send me all their TradCon Quins memes and Quins tweets, and now people are just sending me the crinziest of set. I'm reading these Henry Clay. People worship Henry Clay, and I'm just like, I want to die. This is so disgusting. Anyway, so I figure we're gonna just kind of sit for a little bit, and then we kind of get into it. Talk about right wing, left wing. I know Jared is a creator of Hoppy.org, and Matt is like the Curtis Yarvin guy that's right now, besides Curtis Yarvin himself. So
yeah, I actually saw a pretty badass tweet. Are you guys familiar with who John Milius is?
I've seen him around, I think.
So John Milius is like probably the only director in the Hollywood sphere that you could call a right-wing anarchist.
Yeah.
And he directed Red Dawn. A lot of people don't know that about him, but he said, he personally said, I'm basically an anarchist, and by every other measure, he's definitely right-wing, very pro-gun guy, very kind of old-school masculine type of guy. And speaking of Curtis Yarvin, his daughter is now in that sphere. She makes conservative documentaries. And she just posted a photo with her and Curtis Yarvin. I thought that was really cool.
I saw that. She made some comment about the green lines, like being afraid that there's the guy on Twitter that always makes the lines of like the man or the woman leaning toward each other to show who the power mover is in the relationship.
Love those. I saw recently Curtis Yarvin got a girlfriend from his Surst tweet or Surst post on the Grey Meal. I did a live reading of that. Matt, I parodied your show. I did a live reading of Modebug, and I read the Yarvin dating call is what I read, and we kind of just had fun. We posted memes. We figured out what a dating profile would look like. It was a lot of fun. And I'm like making fun of it, and then it worked, and now I feel bad for making fun of it.
Did it actually work? I saw the one chick posted a picture of herself with him, but then later on she said they weren't actually dating. She was just trolling. I
got a few different accounts. Some saying like a different girl showed up and it started working out, and so I'm not 100% sure, but that's a text that looked like it was working out, and I'm like, fuck, I got to start Substack.
Come subscribe. I need a girlfriend.
Absolutely.
There's no better way to attract a woman than to dedicate yourself to being an online content creator specializing in niche right-wing theory.
Is that like
niche internet micro celebrity?
Is that step 5 willpower and influence?
Yeah. Yeah, you got to niche down. You always got to go as specific as you can.
There you go.
Yeah. So one thing I want to talk about is let's get this agreement out of the way a little bit. Zara, you don't believe libertarianism is a sin ideology, right? You're one of those sick libertarian guys.
So I always think when someone asks me, they're like, do you believe in, are you a thick libertarian or a thin libertarian? I kind of dismiss the argument. I don't think that it's an argument. And the reason that I say that, and I keep saying this on podcasts, and I'm committing myself to it. I'm writing a book, and it will never be done. So don't ask for it. It'll never be done. Like, I'm never going to get done with it. And in the book, I go into about how I think that conversation is kind of a false dichotomy. I don't think that dichotomy exists, because I think thin libertarianism itself is inherently right wing. And I can get into how and why. I mean, at the most basic level, at the most dumbed down grade 1 kind of level, you can look at this simply from property rights. Property rights themselves are hierarchical. Without property rights, without hierarchy, property rights don't exist, and therefore being right wing is entirely about hierarchies and more so about natural hierarchies and valid hierarchies. But as a result, then you don't have thick and thin libertarianism, because thin libertarianism itself is right wing.
I can see that point. I don't disagree with any of that. Anyway, Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, that's I was processing it as he was saying it, and that I think that's bang on. I was gonna go with that. I think that if you're talking like I think what Jared is describing, I would just divorce from libertarianism altogether. I think that it's simply just right wing. And I don't know if if you would necessarily class, because I think libertarianism, at least as an intellectual tradition, is a left wing. It's a left wing mentality. It's a left wing ideology. So I mean, you can use the term, you can pull the term over and use it in the Rothbardian sense. Mm-hmm. But I would say that you're not gaining anything by adding the libertarian part to it.
So the only thing I would say to that is I don't necessarily disagree, and I know some people that are probably watching this are going to be like, well, what you're a libertarian, you're a hardcore libertarian, and it's like, well, you have to kind of understand what Matt's saying, because what Matt's saying is in the classical tradition of quote unquote libertarianism is definitely, especially that word is definitely left wing, and you can say the same about anarchist. I don't like either one of those words. It just so happens that what Mises and Rothbard and Hoppe were all talking about ended up being classified as that, and it got mixed in. And I think a lot of times, I talk about this also in the book, I'm going to reference it a ton of times because I cover these topics all the time, but a lot of that has to do with subversion. Libertarianism and right-wing spaces itself has had a serious problem with subversion from very, very early on. The French Revolution itself was subversion. If you look at Trotsky, he succeeded where no other leftist could in flipping right-wing and moderate spaces to become extremely far left. And we've dealt with that same problem over and over and over again, especially even in the modern age. I mean, if you can go back to Teddy Roosevelt and talk about him, you can talk about Wilson, you can talk about the neocons, the rise of the neocons. And to me, libertarianism, at least the left libertarian incarnation that we're seeing today that is pervasive, is just another rehash of that. And that's why I say I don't necessarily disagree with Matt, because at one time I was extremely an extreme proponent of divorcing myself from the term libertarian, because it was not serving the purpose that I needed. And ultimately, I view libertarianism and right wing, at least libertarianism in kind of the Rothbardian Hoppe sense, as the purest expression of what it means to be right wing. And conversely, the purest expression, right wing, would be the purest expression in quote unquote libertarian. Now that gets obviously confused as to what we were just talking about with subversion and the history of things and stuff like that. Maybe we do need a new word. We've got 2 articles on the site, one that advocates for retaining the word, and then one saying, it's time to leave it behind and go a different direction. So
I have been struggling to figure out how to identify myself. Obviously I have the show it's king pilled, and so
speaking of king pills, Matt.
Yeah.
Is this the king pill? Is that
Let me
is that
zoom
where I
this in a
take to
bit.
be based? Let me try to get
What is that?
It is one of those gas station sex pills. I cannot get any more zoomed in for some reason.
Oh yeah, enhancement pill. I see it now.
This is Matt's side hustle.
I'm busted.
But is that what I take to become bait? I mean, it's red. Is that the base pill?
Yeah. Hey, it's a red pill. You can't beat that. It glows.
Can't be bad. I mean, that looks like the shit.
Yeah. Although if you need that, then you may then I don't know how kingly you can consider yourself.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's funny. Yeah, I've been struggling to figure out exactly what to do with myself here, because so many times now I've felt like, all right, I've arrived. I figured it out. I've unlocked the secret. I have the understanding. I have the knowledge. Yeah. And then one thing leads to another. I get new data points, and I have to go back and reimagine everything. And I have to. It's like I'm trying to build a house, and so I'm trying to get down to bedrock to build my basement. And every time I think I've hit bedrock, the more that I dig, it gets softer and softer, and eventually I fall down to another level below it.
Yep.
So
I experienced the same exact phenomena. So it's cool to hear someone else say that. Man, I feel like sometimes that we, especially like if you're a man, right? Like just speaking like in a classical sense, trying to determine who we are is very fundamental to what it means to be a man, right?
Yeah.
And that has kind of been that was my impetus a long time before I ever even started focusing on my career. And a lot of people say, well, you kind of got that backwards, build yourself and do all that stuff first and then kind of find yourself. But I just never really thought that way. I thought, if I'm going to pursue anything or do anything in my life, how can I act as a human being? How can I act as a man and not know who I am?
Yes.
And that is such a problem in society today. Man, people they have no depth to them at all. Like, I feel like if you look back in history, like just go back to World War I, all the guys that fought in that war, they had an extremely deep understanding, or at least a lot of them had an extremely deep understanding of philosophy. Most of them spoke Latin. They understood calculus. How many people today do you know that can claim all those three things? Like, I don't know Latin. I wish I knew Latin and Greek. I wish I was that
a little bit.
I wish I was
Catholic.
that type of man. You know what I mean? Like, I wish and I'm trying to get there. I actually bought Wheelock's Latin because I want to learn Latin and I want to learn Greek too, because they're kind of the classical languages, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that that pursuit is so important as men. But going back to the point, it's great to hear you say that, because I did the same thing for a very long time, and my views have evolved too. I'm definitely not one to say that I'm above that, and I kind of feel like that's kind of, I hate to say this because it's like we're right wing, so we're clearly anti-science, right? I mean, that's the narrative, right? But it's kind of the scientific method applied to this, right? Mm-hmm. Is we dig a little deeper, we discover new things, and then we reformulate, right? So I feel like I don't think I'll ever hit the end of that, and I think that that's okay. But I do think I have a very good, firm understanding of who I am, right? Not necessarily what everything is about, or that I understand everything clearly, but I think I have a pretty good understanding of who I am. And I think that what Matt was saying is, I think everybody should take that to heart. I think everybody should learn from that. You got to know who you are to be able to tell anybody anything else, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's been the great journey for me, is trying to figure out who I am, trying to figure out where I am in relation to everything else. Like if you can't, like imagine a world with no mirrors. What would you do to figure out what you look like? How would you know? How would you be able to conceptualize that? Right. You have to go out and you have to interact with your environment, and you have to interact with it as much as possible. You have to get as much of the data, as many data points as you possibly can, so you can triangulate your own position with respect to the rest of them.
Absolutely.
So it ends up mashing up with, it's inevitable. Once you go down this route, it's inevitable that you're going to get into religion and politics, and trying to understand religion and politics, trying to understand how human beings operate at scale. Because you've learned very quickly that human beings do not operate as individuals.
That's right.
The individual human being is a fiction. There is no individual human being.
I want to bring it up because I know, Matt, you said on the last one, my podcast was made that the individual collectivist dichotomy is a false dichotomy, and Zara said the same thing.
Oh yeah,
when he's talking about Rand. And so, if you guys want to get into that a little bit, I would love to hear. Basically, I'm just gonna sit here and like fanboy out, like. So
I'll let Matt take this one. I rambled a lot on the last one,
so okay. So the fundamental unit of the human being is or I guess you would say like the point of sovereignty within a human culture is ultimately something like the family. It's the unit of the mother and the father with the child that's produced from that. And then it's been natural throughout human history until very recently that a family was more than just a mother, father, and a child. It was it was at least 3 generations,
Extended
and sometimes
family.
4.
Yeah.
It was extended family. That extended family became a tribe, and everybody acted as a representative of their tribe. This is why your name was so important, because your name literally identified you.
Yep.
And there's this fascinating thing about identity. There's this, I don't know if this is directly relevant, but I'm going to run with it. There's this paradox of identity that when you identify yourself, what you're doing is you're saying, this is the thing that makes me different from everything else. This is what sets me apart from everything else.
That's right.
But when you identify yourself with respect to something else. So you attach yourself to everything else. So there's this paradox about identity that it's both the thing that sets you apart from everything else, and it's also the thing that makes you the same as everything else. So when I identify myself as a member of my family, I'm saying I'm not all of these other things, but I'm also saying I am all of these other things. There's a weird paradox in that. And so then ultimately the collectivist individualist dichotomy becomes it's just fake. It doesn't actually, it's fake and gay. It doesn't actually port to
100%.
the real world.
100%.
Humans don't operate as individuals, but they don't operate as collectives either.
Correct.
They operate as tribes.
Absolutely. While you were talking, I was like, man, Matt sounds exactly like Rothbard in his later years. He's like, this is where Rothbard got to, right? I think it's so important. Like, God, it's so aggravating to hear what I call lowberts, or what has commonly become known as lowberts. I read Anatomy of the State. Now I'm a libertarian. Now you should listen to me because I can use basic logic, right? Like, no, you're not. You don't understand the evolution of the philosophy and where things went. If you guys will humor me, I want to compare what Matt just said to a quote by Rothbard. If you'll give me a second to read that.
No problem.
So he says, contemporary libertarians often assume mistakenly that individuals are bound to each other only by the nexus of market exchange. They forget that everyone is necessarily born into a family, a language, and a culture. Every person is born into one or several overlapping communities, usually including an ethnic group with specific values, cultures, religious beliefs, and traditions. He is generally born into a country. He is always born into a specific historical context of time and place, meaning neighborhood and land area. And this right here, I think it meshes so perfectly to what Matt was just saying, is that you can't divorce people from who they are. The moment you've done that, you're no better than a communist. You're literally doing the same exact thing. And that's why you're getting rejected, is because you are pulling away what is important to people. If you're a communist, you're pulling away the same exact stuff. You're pulling away from the middle. You're pulling away the community and the family and things like that. And you're trying to extrapolate it to the state. And then if you're trying to be like this quote individualist, you're stripping away all the things that make people's lives important to them, their families, their communities, their land area, their geographic area, their sacred geography. You know, and I talk about this all the time because I'm a Southerner, right? Like, sacred geography, it means something. Blood and soil means stuff to people. And if you don't take that into account, you don't understand humanity, and you never will.
And ultimately, if you spread the ideas of individualism, if you encourage people to think of themselves as individuals, you degrade them. You degrade them because people who think of themselves as individuals don't know how to act. They begin to act against their own interests because they'll pursue the motivation of their own ego. And that ego has to be balanced by something. And it has to be balanced by people, and it has to be people who care about you because they have a vested interest in you.
And
the objectivist in me is screaming right now.
Blood ties to you, right? Like, this is why blood and soil, the things that really affect you. And this is why we reject, at least I think you would agree with me, this is why we reject this cosmopolitanism. We reject this rootlessness that is so pervasive in society, because it leads to these things, these generations of culture, these degenerations of societal values, and ultimately it leads to the destruction of the individual, right? So, like, you guys are so worried about the individual, yet you are leading yourself in the path that is ultimately going to destroy you. And this is what can be seen, and this is really a facet of this, is really the private company bros, right?
Yes.
Like this is the same exact thing. They're taking this to the extent where they will literally walk onto the boxcar or kneel down in a field and say, well, at least I was consistent. What the fuck does that matter if you're dead?
Yeah.
You know, like I don't understand this. And I really don't think that Rothbard or especially Hoppe would ever concede to that as valid. I mean,
No.
there's so many, like there are basic libertarian arguments against that, right? Like Rothbard made plenty of them. Like you can't assume that, you know, the question that I asked on Twitter the other day is, at what point does Pfizer lose its private company status? When it is 1% owned by the government or when it's 100% owned? And very few people could answer it to any type of satisfaction, because the lens that they view these things through is very limited, and they haven't read enough, in my opinion. They haven't gotten far enough deep down into the philosophy to really understand how to answer that question.
Yeah, like fascism poses, I think, the most difficult issue. Like the merging of corporatism and state is like the most difficult thing for libertarians.
Yeah,
because that's what has people listening. I will have Clint from Liberty Lockdown to come on the podcast talk about fascism specifically. It'll be a lot of fun.
And I think that, can I speak to that actually? I think that there's the reason for that is because libertarians don't understand the equality and hierarchy dichotomy. And that's a real dichotomy, right? They don't understand that. And if you don't understand that, the next layer down from that is the natural and artificial dichotomy. So if you think about this from a 4-quadrant perspective, you've got artificial on the top, you've got natural on the bottom, you got egalitarianism on the left, and hierarchy on the right, right? If you don't understand that, and that's just the first level, I can go even deeper than that and how that gets malformed based off of testing in reality and understanding certain things. But if you don't understand that, you can't deal with these things. And with fascism, I hate even using that word because it's so misused. I hate it. Like, I kind of just want to call it communism because in a lot of ways it's basically communism. All
right-wing authoritarian is fascism, bro. That's all it means. Fascism means right-wing authoritarian. I literally had to explain to someone that's not true. And this guy was in college for 4 years. It's like, fuck.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, if you look at things from that 4-quadrant perspective that I just described, if you believe in hierarchies, okay, you're on the right and you've got your hierarchies and all of that. But what you don't understand is that there's two different types of hierarchies. There are artificial hierarchies and there are natural hierarchies. The family, the tribe, the community, your geographical area, those are natural hierarchies. Those are natural inefficiencies or inequalities and things like that, right? The inequality creates trade and trade creates prosperity and blah, 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 right? So when you get over to the right side and then you deal with artificial hierarchies, then things go out the window because you start dealing with things that don't fit into that normal divide, right? And that's what this private company stuff is because these are artificial hierarchies that are being created by the state as a result of interference, right? So, sorry, I know I'm rambling a lot. Give me 2 seconds. I promise I'm going to finish this point. So once you identify that these things are artificial hierarchies, you can begin quickly to understand that artificial hierarchies are not natural and as a result are not actually hierarchies. They are invalid hierarchies and thus they are a form of egalitarianism. And when libertarians understand this, they will be able to transcend this problem. And until they do, they won't.
The hierarchy, the fact that it's an unnatural hierarchy makes it egalitarian. That point you made, yes. I wanted to draw that out. I wanted to make sure I kept that together so I could draw that out. Because by making by creating an invalid hierarchy, what you're doing, the people who are creating that invalid hierarchy are trying to flatten the playing field between them and a valid hierarchy.
Exactly.
And they're trying to do it unjustly by operating according to unjust means. Exactly. And really another major issue with fascism is the very fact that even a company that is ostensibly 100% private, it's still a creation of the state within the context of our modern world now. Because
Absolutely.
the only reason that it's recognized as a formal organization is because it's been sanctioned by the state.
Exactly.
And if it tries to operate without the consent of the state, it will be crushed.
Exactly.
I'm not saying that it should be. I'm saying that it will be.
Yeah.
This is a description of reality. And you
this,
have to deal with reality as it exists before you can try to turn reality into something that it isn't.
Thank you. I said this 100,000 times. If you can't deal with reality, you are fucking useless.
Yes.
You are less than useless. You're harmful because you're going to apply things to this conversation that A, don't make sense, and B, will take us in the wrong direction. And therefore, you're worse than the freaking enemy because you're literally sabotaging us from the inside. So if you think that, just shut up and sit down and listen to me and Matt.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. That it's like we see these people who are wrong about all these things, and it's like I just want you to sit down and read and understand all this. I want you to get all of this in your head before you go out and you begin doing your evangelistic efforts.
Yes.
And what you realize very quickly is that the majority of people cannot and will not ever do that. The vast majority of people will run around parroting whatever is fed to them by the people who they see as most credible, because those are the people who those are the people who have touched them in some way. Those are the people who have connected with them, provided some kind of value to them, and made them feel a chain of obligation there. And they'll go around and they'll parrot that.
Yes.
This is the fundamental structure of society. This is why you will always have a ruling class, a small minority of the society that directs the rest of them. It doesn't matter how. It doesn't matter what your specific formal arrangement is. It doesn't matter whether you're communist or fascist or libertarian. It doesn't matter what your actual ostensible formal arrangement is. It will always turn into one small group of people leading and directing the larger group of people. And so the last point related to this is that this ideology of individualism ultimately encourages people to act in ways against their own self-interest, because it encourages them to divorce themselves from their tribe. And when they're divorced from their tribe, they're much easier to conquer. So then that small minority of people will inevitably conquer and rule them unjustly. This is a natural consequence of spreading this idea of individualism. And this is why it's become clear to me that libertarianism, as commonly expressed, even by the Rothbardians, libertarianism is ultimately just ineffective communism. They both wind up in the same spot. Libertarianism is like the prerequisite to break people down for the imposition of communism. And fascism is an in-between spot on that process. But all of these, this is why, again, individualism and collectivism is a false dichotomy, because it's just it's two wings both going the same direction, two wings on a bird that's flying the same direction. They work against each other. You get this Hegelian dialectic. They work against each other or with each other to take us to ultimately just a point where a small minority will have achieved conquest over the vast majority.
And I think something to align with that as well is that, you're talking about the ruling elite and how people get there and they ultimately control and direct society and things like that. And then it's easy to relate this to the natural and artificial hierarchies, right? Without those artificial hierarchies, these ruling elite aren't the ruling elite that are in control.
Yes.
It is a natural elite. And this is what Hoppe talks about in regards to, this is why he created PFS. PFS was supposed to be and it is this directional movement towards creating more of that natural elite, trying to create a small segment of it. You know what I mean? Like a kind of like the private gentleman's club, right? That's what PFS is supposed to be. And that's really what we need more of, right? We need our own institutions that are creating those natural hierarchies that earn respect and things like that. Now, will he succeed? Who knows? I mean, that's way far off in the future anyway. But to align with what you said, if people don't understand this and they don't understand that these artificial hierarchies are being created, they're going to fall into this propaganda circle, right? And as a result, this is why I don't like the idea of the marketplace of ideas, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. And and as a result, when you think about this, or when you get into discussing this, you're going to end up being subservient to that false ruling elite, right? Because that's where you're headed.
Yes.
You put out a tweet earlier about how let's just get along people are the enemy.
Oh yeah.
Would you mind Would you mind going more into that for a little bit? Because that's Matt would want to.
So this can tie into kind of my overall viewpoint of how to treat the left, especially in regards to strategy. I really hate unionism, and I hate the idea of I guess what you could call like this liberal hippie bullshit of we should all just get along and sing kumbaya and we're all libertarians, right? No, I hate some of you. Like I despise some of you. Like, get away from me. I want nothing to do with you. I want to create my own kind of natural elite over here, right? And you guys stay over there because we're totally different. And the moment that you try and synthesize us together, I'm going to end up having to come your way. And that is not what I'm going to do because I'm right wing. I know I'm right wing. And if I capitulate on any of these things or any of these positions or the way I've come to any of my conclusions, I'm going to have to compromise. And as a result, I'm being subverted. This is what happened in the Republican Party with the neocons, right? They needed that neocon power, right? So what did they do? They ceded their ground. And as a result, they compromised to the left, and now the Republican Party is a leftist party, right? Like, this is what happens.
That sounds like Andrew's anarcho-tropism, saying when they see the power to the left because it was a time trap. But like, I need to have him on to explain that to me some more because I don't get it. You guys are throwing on so many ideas here. I'm trying to like catch up and like pay attention. I'm trying to pay attention. And you say one thing, my brain will go off. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm actually in this one. Let me hop back into this real quick and try to remember some things. What's that? There's a political science law, like all institutions are not explicitly right wing, go left wing.
Oh yeah,
Conquest second law.
Yeah.
I love that one, and I always forget what it is. But
here's another law for you that's similar to that. It's Pornell's Iron Law of Bureaucracy. Pornell is spelled Pournelle. And what it states is that in any bureaucratic organization, there will be two kinds of people: those who work to further the actual goals of the organization and those who work for the organization itself.
Yep.
And inevitably, the Iron Law states that in all cases, inevitably, the second type of person will always gain control of the organization and will write the rules under which the organization functions. So an example of this would be the LP. So you're going to have two groups of people that are in there: those who are working to advance the ostensible goals of the Libertarian Party and those who are working to advance the Libertarian Party. And inevitably, the latter group will always gain control of the institution and hold control of it. This is an inevitability of politics.
And it's true. I mean, if you look at the LP, like exactly what you're saying happened, right? I mean, like literally the entire focus of the Libertarian Party shifted from promoting and achieving libertarianism to promoting the Libertarian Party at any cost, including incorporating people that were not libertarians and giving them positions of power within that sphere in order to maintain their control. This is what they do, right? And this is it's basically the exact same thing with what I'm talking about in regards to subversion. I mean, this to me, that is a method of subversion, right?
Yeah.
It is a consequence thereof.
This is why when Dave Smith had his big debate with Nick Sarwark a couple years ago, I went in feeling about Nick Sarwark as I do now, which is that he's just just absolute scum. He's worse than the shit you scrape off your shoe. But listening to that conversation, even though I love Dave and I hate Sarwark, I came away being like, Sarwark is right. The part where he really got me the most is when he told Dave, he said, it's not my job to turn people into libertarians. That's your job with your podcast. You're supposed to be the one in the education business. He's like, as the chair of the Libertarian Party, it's my responsibility to get votes for the Libertarian Party and get libertarian politicians elected. That's a different task. Yep. Those are different responsibilities.
Bad incentive structures. And this is why I think that party politics in and of themselves are terrible. I mean, that's kind of a because
it's democratic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, exactly. And I think that this is why I definitely fall more on the side of creating I guess, our own natural elite institutions, because those can be controlled and they are only for a goal. They are not for taking over or trying to do anything specific. They are only for promoting our goals. And then we use parties to achieve the goals we want with the better incentive structures that we can provide as a function of those institutions, right? So like if libertarians today said, fuck the Libertarian Party, we're all leaving and we're taking all of our money and we're going to go create a political action committee today that its sole goal is to get constitutional carry in 50 states. Do you know how long that would take? It would take 6 months and we'd get our fucking shit. Like, and then change the purpose of the organization, change it to something else, and then pursue that. We would start winning. We would start winning very quickly, and it would probably end up not so good because we that kind of power incentive and that kind of power structure is going to cause conflict, and it will ultimately cause some severe what's a nice way to put this, blood in the street, but that's essentially what would happen, right? So not that I'm necessarily okay, so I'm not going to go down that path because I don't want to get another FBI visit.
We got Lefty Jacob in the chat. Daniel Sway, he's going to be posting and saying a bunch of Mises Caucus nonsense. Jacob, you feel free to leave. You feel free to leave, Jacob. Look, Jared blocked you. It is a safe space. So,
hey, 79,721 people blocked. I will hit 80,000 before the end of the year.
I kind of want to be the 80,000s. This maybe that one guy.
One thing that Yarvin talks about is just as a hypothetical, because I don't think this would ever happen. I don't think he actually thinks this would ever happen. But he's trying to illustrate this as a he's trying to use this as an example so that you can sort of like start thinking about politics in this way. Imagine if you had a guy run for whatever political party, it doesn't matter, but he runs with the message that if you elect me, I will dissolve Congress. I will abolish, I will do XYZ. I will accord to myself the power of an absolute monarch, and I will rule in this way and give you this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, and this thing. If a guy like that was elected with that mandate, that's a way that you can use democracy in a right-wing manner. You can use democracy pragmatically to bring about a right-wing result.
Yeah.
So then the point would be, so like if you're going to do that, then you have to somehow you have to game theory it out basically and come up with the right circumstances whereby a message like that or similar to that can accomplish any sort of result along those lines. So obviously he's using the illustration of a president, that you're like getting someone elected president to then go on to serve as an elected king, but you don't have to do it at that level. You could do it at the county commissioner, or you could do sheriff, or at whatever level.
Buck. I'm just saying.
And this is literally what must be done. This is Hoppe strategy. 100% is we take what we can and we do what we can in these individualized areas. And I've talked about this with you. I think last week, Caleb. When you do that and you do it in individualized areas, right? These smaller, more controllable areas all across the country, it makes it a lot harder for the state to target you as well. This is why I don't like the Free State Project as much as people would probably assume that I do. I dislike the Free State Project because it is a centralization of our power, and when you do that, you're going to end up being the target, which is why I think, and no offense to Mulbug, I understand that. I agree that you can use that in that way, but I think ultimately you would end up with the same result that I was talking about earlier with there would be violent resistance, right? Whereas if it's at a local level, you're less likely to get that.
Right.
One thing.
Just real quick. One thing that compromises being able to accomplish things like that effectively at the local level is when you have a really big, loud national campaign and you try to get in front of everybody because you are following the mistaken notion that the way to achieve any sort of positive outcome in this arena is by trying to evangelize people and get them on board with your message. That's a very good way to ensure that you don't get to operate in quiet and secret. You don't get to. That's a very good way to just draw the eye of Sauron and ensure that all of your efforts, no matter how local, get completely stamped out.
And this is exactly why I'm against Dave running for the head of the Libertarian Party for the president. I'm totally against that, 100%. I think that it would be a terrible thing for him to do because I think ultimately, like you said, it's going to cause the attention to go there, and it's going to cause problems at our local levels, even if they do that kind of stuff, right? Because it's gonna dissuade these local areas where if you put a libertarian in those insulated cell. Yes, exactly. You want to create small, I don't want to say terrorist cells, but terrorist cells across the country. It's a much easier way to do things. Decentralized terrorist cells work. Anyway, yeah. So, I mean, you're going to end up with problems. And this is why I kind of talk, ties into what I said earlier. I asked this question, I want to ask this question of Dave, and I want his answer is, what would you rather have? Would you rather have the Mises Caucus in control of the LP and be able to run a presidential campaign, the complete control of the LP, or would you rather have constitutional carry in 50 states? If he answers that and he answers it in our favor, I'll let up. But if he doesn't, then you know where his mind is, and it's in the wrong place.
What do you say to this response from Jacob over here?
It hasn't shown. Oh,
yeah,
I see it.
Yeah. My response to that would be, of course, they're going to see everything. They monitor everything anyway, but it's going to cause less attention and less resources to be devoted to you than a larger centralized operation. Whereas, if you do this in New Hampshire, they're going to immediately try and clamp down and send all of their federal forces out there to do that. The United States government, the federal government, really does not have that many federal officers, right?
Yeah.
They're small FBI units all across the country, and they can do these types of things in smaller areas. But really, they need to be able to mobilize all of these people to go there. If you do that and you can expand your footprint of these small cells across the country, they're not going to have the ability to respond, not to all of them. They just won't. It's about the division of resources, right? And you're trying to subvert that and get around it. That's the whole thing with sleeper cell terrorism, right? Is that you don't have this Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. And this is why the United States government wanted to have a war over there, because they're like, we're defending you, over there and blah, 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 because we're attacking this entity. But that entity isn't there. There are terrorist cells all over the world, right? But they needed that visualization that we were there in Afghanistan to act like we were actually fighting it when we're not. And terrorist attacks are thwarted all across the world today, but it's much harder to do so. I mean, look at the supposed growth of right-wing white nationalist terrorism, right? None of that was stopped. Why wasn't it stopped? Because it was birthed online, and it was diversified. It was decentralized, right? But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my point. So
decentralization is not a panacea. It's not automatic because it's decentralized. That means it's good. Decentralized can also mean disorganized. So you can't think of yourself as a national movement. You can't think of yourself as we're trying to win back America. If you're trying to function that way, then being decentralized just means that you're spread out and you're easy to pick off. You have to be focused on your specific region. And you have to have a tactic a strategy and a tactic that's adapted to your specific region and to the specific goals that you have for that region. There's no reason to have a big national campaign unless you're being suckered into something that isn't actually going to be used for the purposes that people are claiming it's going to be used for, or maybe even believing that it's going to be used for. I don't think that there's necessarily, I don't have a tinfoil hat on about the Mises Caucus. I think it's a bunch of really misled people who are well-intentioned, but they have an elementary school understanding of the forces that they're reckoning with. And they're ultimately just going to become sacrificial lambs.
I can't disagree with any of that. I think that's a perfect description of exactly what I was getting at is to elucidate that a little more. When you have that national campaign, they're going to focus on national campaign concerns. And as a result, the local levels are going to absorb that information, and then it's going to hurt your local cause. That's what it's going to do. So you can't have a quote unquote decentralized movement that has a national goal. It has to be a decentralized movement that has many local goals, right? So that's what I think what me and Matt are both getting at.
Exactly.
Again, so much great stuff thrown out here. Let's kind of get into this. Let's get into Harper and Yarvin. I've almost finished reading all of Harper. I got three more books left, and I'm slowly going through Unqualified Reservations. Loving both of them. Yarvin seemed very influenced by Harper, really more influenced by Harper than Rothbard or anybody else.
Yeah, I would not disagree with that at all. When reading Yarvin, you get a distinct feeling that that's where he's coming from, is that he's read Hoppe, he understands Hoppe, and he's trying to build off of that to maybe do some, I guess, some evolution of thought like me and Matt were talking about earlier. I think that that's where he's coming from. Matt may have a different perspective, but that's my opinion.
I have to be honest, I haven't read a lot of Hoppe, ultimately. I never kind of never really got around to it. So I've read probably half of Democracy, the God That Failed, and I've read A Short History of Man, and I've read
Short History of Man is awesome. I love Short History, man.
It was brilliant. For a short book, it's fantastic.
Oh yeah, you get so much information in such a condensed format. I mean, just understanding how humanity evolved itself and created the idea of property rights, and as a result, property rights are stem from the creation of the family and the creation of the tribe unit stems from the creation of property and all of that. Oh my God, so many things come into perspective when you read that book. I love it.
And then the way that he ties it in, like my favorite, the point that blew me away the most out of all of this was how he tied that in with sexual dynamics.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the fact that monogamy evolved not at the same time, but it evolved in the same, like in concordance with private property.
Well, it had to, because without the family unit and the separation that was caused in order to escape the Malthusian trap, those are the people that left, right? Those are the people that the smaller groups that were tied together with family units and things like that were the ones that left, and they're the ones that could leave. The old hunter-gatherer alpha male kind of group dynamics that were there in the caves where we're all gathering fruit and bringing them back to the caves or whatever, that didn't work, right? It was failing, and as a result, the family unit was created to escape that, right? So the sexual dynamics that come along with that and the creation of monogamy and things like that are very much human, right? They are the evolution of humanity itself, and to understand that gives so much perspective about how important it is, right? And how much we have to fight to maintain those things, because if we don't and we go the opposite direction, which is clearly where we're headed, we're going to fall right back into the same freaking problems. And it's clearly we're already doing that.
Right. What it really illustrates to me as well is that you can't separate economic degeneracy from sexual degeneracy.
100%.
The two go hand in hand.
Mises thought the same thing.
I was about to bring up that same Mises quote.
Yeah. And Mises, what was that quote, Caleb?
You guys keep talking. I'm going to get it up real quick because it's a basic.
I got it right here. True capitalism discourages prostitution and sexual degeneracy. Mises said that, right? Like, and he understood that. He may not have understood it from the same perspective that Hoppe brought it to. I think Hoppe evolved that idea to the point that it made it clear. But clearly, this is when you understand hierarchies and you understand capitalism, you understand trade, you understand the inequality that comes along with that. All of this falls perfectly in line. It gives you so much perspective about just how right all of this is, and what we have to do, what we have to preserve. And this is why Hoppe is 100% correct when he says there's a lot that we can learn from the social conservatives, because if we eschew that, if we lose that, we're going to lose the rest of it, right? We're going to lose the economic incentives as well, and it's just all tied together.
There's no coincidence then that basically all of the 19th century, or all the 19th century, but all the 20th century communists were all almost to a man, were all sexual degenerates as well, or in favor of promoting sexual degeneracy of any kind relative to the age.
The 100%. Sexual revolution was the greatest mistake ever made.
And you can see this in one topic I like to bring up all the time with these supposedly quote unquote trad communists. If you've ever encountered those.
Hold up. What the fuck?
Yeah. Like these are a real group of people. They believe that communism is very traditional and it's trad and all this. I'm like, okay, well then explain to me how the division of East and West Germany, when there was still the Berlin Wall, in East Germany, there were gay discos and abortion. And when they unified, West Germany had to compromise on those two things in order to reunify. So can you trad communists explain that to me? Because clearly they're not very trad if they're the ones pushing abortion and gay disco clubs. So it aggravates me, but it goes to this point, right? I mean that the economic, quote unquote, economic right wing economics, quote unquote, right wing economics, and quote unquote right wing social behavior go perfectly in hand. And if you don't have both of those, you're going to lose.
One thing that I'm so again, I haven't read that much Hoppe, so there's areas where he goes more into this than than where I've read. But one thing that stands out to me about Moldbug is, like, I just finished reading one of his most recent pieces in from Gray Mirror, where he talks. He's like he disproves socialism and capitalism. He explains basically how they're both fake and gay, and he has a bunch of really interesting economic ideas that are not. They kind of break the mold a little bit, and it's really from this formalist school of politics where you're dealing with the world exactly as it is. You're not coming you're not bringing to the table necessarily any preloaded notions about idealistic conceptions of human nature. You're just dealing with the world as it is, and you're like, okay, well, if this is the outcome that we're looking for, then how do we program the system to spit out that outcome? How do we? It's like, I was going to say this a minute ago, that we were talking about like identifying yourself, and libertarians, and really this is kind of seems like a Western thing in general. They identify themselves with like, this is what my ideal society would look like, and I'm going to identify with that ideal society, rather than this is my preferred methodology, or this is my lifestyle, or this is my behavior, this is my praxis, to use the word.
Right.
That was kind of a thing that switched for me, where I was like, rather than identifying myself with like, well, I'm an ANCAP, so I want to, my ideal form of social arrangement or government or lack thereof would be anarcho-capitalism. Therefore, I'm going to identify with this utopian idea. Now I'm kind of a little partial to Andrew from Popular Liberty. He coined this term praxians, that were people who practice praxis. But even that, there's still, I'm not completely marrying myself to the word. But this idea of identifying yourself with your praxis versus your end goal, I think that's a major, that's like a blind spot for, at first I saw it for libertarians. Then I kind of started zooming out, and I was like, well, this is just a characteristic of liberalism in general. And it seems to me like, as I started studying through this, trying to understand the roots of all these things, it's like, if you want to understand an idea, you have to understand its history. You can't separate an idea from its history. And so I start going back through history, and I just kept going further back. And eventually I realized that from following the history of politics, I'd gotten into religion. I'd gotten into the history of religion. And originally, the economic distribution of, or the economic system in a given region wasn't capitalist or socialist or communist. It was entirely different. It was just different altogether. And capitalism as a proposed system was conceived of and derived from the aristocracy and ultimately the merchant class. It was a merchant ideology. And there was a really powerful incentive for the non-monarch lords, feudal lords, to favor something like capitalism, because it would promote their interests while tugging away at the interests of the sovereign. So it was a way of creating, of moving from a natural hierarchy to a more artificial hierarchy, where now we're introducing a new system that operates according to new principles. We're going to introduce this idea of individualism. So now having a king is immoral and bad, because everyone is an individual, and all individuals are created equal. And so it's wrong to have one ruling over the other. That idea being introduced, like, shifted the economic system, and it changed the fundamental unit within the economic system, and it changed the entire incentive structure. So then when you read through Moldbug, he kind of like zooms himself out of the liberal conception of the world altogether, and just starts with, how do we promote the interests of this nation as a collective? So you can have a problem with, maybe it shouldn't be a nation, maybe it should be a city or a state or whatever your sovereign unit is, but looking at the problem from that perspective, how do we holistically improve the well-being of this polity? And approaching economics from that perspective, then you get again at this idea that I'm saying that all of these isms, capitalism, communism, libertarianism, fascism, liberalism, all of these isms are all descendant from this conception of individualism, which itself is a fiction. It's like a false notion. This is I guess a kind of a long rambling way to say this is a key distinction I see between Hoppe and Yarvin, where Hoppe seems like he's still much operating from the capitalist perspective and defining capitalism as this notion of it's kind of like a free market utopian perspective, where Moldbug approaches the market and he says basically there's no such thing as a free market. Like if the market is free, it's because somebody bought it. And if you're operating in the market as a free individual, then that means you're the product.
That's interesting. That's an interesting perspective. I would say that Hoppe and Yarvin diverge in that way, mostly because the way that Hoppe looks at this in democracy is that starting at the end, we have democracy here right now, right? And this is the total de-evolution of societal order, right? It is the complete destruction of it. We're and please don't take this literally, the end of history, right? Like it's not really the end of history. Hoppe would hit me if I said that. But the end of quote unquote societal governance history or what have you, right? So and then back from there, you would have republicanism. And then back from there, you would have constitutional monarchy. And before that, you would have absolute monarchy. And then before that, you would have kind of this decentralized ruling elites or natural elites, right? Like that is kind of where we need to be. We need to be on the opposite end of the spectrum. And as a result, I don't think that you would have this idea of this kind of globalist capitalist order, right? Like obviously that would not exist, especially within that group. And I think that I think they're closer than maybe either of us would maybe give them credit for, but I think they approach the subject from two different places, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe if you can verify a thesis from two different positions, then it's more likely to be true, right? But I think that I think ultimately you're going to have trade, right? You're going to have trade between these different polities or what have you, these different feudal orders. Ideally I would be ecstatic if we went back to a feudal order, right? Excluding the whole serfdom thing, like integrate those people into the division of labor. We're all going to benefit from that. So I think we ultimately all be better. And as a result, you're not going to have kind of this total globalist trade order either. It's not going to look like that. And I think libertarians get really, really caught up in applying their utopian ideals to the current reality and not how it would look under a private property order, which is much closer to the feudal order, right? If you apply these or quote unquote libertarian ideas to the feudal order, you get a much different type of reality, right? You get this reality where you've got these kind of feudal kings for what have you. If you want to call them kings, that's fine. If you want to call them elders or
CEOs,
what have you? Yeah, exactly. It doesn't really matter to me. They're the people that have control over these smaller polities, right? So you're going to see that these people are going to act in their own interests and not necessarily interest in the global good, right? And that's kind of the way it works today, but not really, because there are incentives that bust that down just as a matter of it being a global order. And you're going to have a totally different makeup. And I think libertarians get into a problem there in trying to view, like I was saying, this global capitalist order through libertarian. This is neoliberalism, right? Like you're literally getting into, this is what distinguishes us from neoliberals, right? Is because they want that global order. We don't care. We want private property rights, and whatever order emerges from those private property rights and this kind of feudal look at the world is great and fine. And we do want people to trade and be more libertarian and like that. But if they're not, that's fine too. And they can do the things that they want to do in their own best interests.
The neoliberal, the key distinguishing factor of the neoliberal order is that it sees the individual man as an economic unit, fundamentally as an economic unit. And that's where libertarianism goes wrong.
Yes.
When it does, that's where it goes wrong,
100%.
where it treats man as an economic unit, not a spiritual unit.
100%.
And ultimately, if you're treating man as an economic unit, you're going to wind up with a system that doesn't value the individual, absolutely, by definition.
Absolutely.
So like in that piece about that I was just talking about with Moldbug, where he's talking about socialism and capitalism. He says capitalism is ostensibly it's a free market in capital, but it's preposterous to suggest that we have a free market in capital.
Oh, hell no.
We never have. It just doesn't exist. It I'd have to think about this, but it almost can't exist.
I don't even think that it's, like libertarians get kind of quote unquote in trouble for this all the time, of saying that we live in a capitalist system, we want to defend that capitalist system and blah, blah, blah. To me, it's not a capitalist system because, like you said, there are capital interests, specifically banking interests, that prevent us from being at that kind of order, right? And as a result, you get all these problems that leach into time preference and how the Fed creates degeneracy and things like that. You also have, as a result, this idea that, like I was saying, that this is capitalism. It's not. I consider it more kind of a consumerist ideology, right? And that's not free market property rights, right? We don't want to incentivize consuming because consuming is high time preference. We want to incentivize saving, and saving as a result creates more wealth. It creates the development of human beings, and it creates the development of communities and things like that. So I think libertarians would do well to abandon that idea that we live in a capitalist order, and just give credit where it's due that consumerist ideology has had some benefits, but ultimately it's destroyed kind of who we are. That
was the next point that actually I was going to make, is that that when you treat man as an economic unit, fundamentally, you begin to only evaluate the world on material terms.
Yes, exactly. And this is sorry, I'm going to interrupt you because this is such an important point. This is the regime libertarian point of view. And this is why I get so bent out of shape with these guys that are on the regime side that want to take immigration, right? They only want to talk about immigration from a perspective of GDP. They don't want to talk about it from the communities aspect. They don't want to talk about it from the family aspect. They don't want to talk about it from any other aspect than the wealth, the supposed consumerist wealth generation point. That is the only point they want to argue it from, which is why that guy backed out of the debate with Dave, because I bet Dave was going to approach this more from our perspective and he would have lost, right? Yeah. So you're exactly right. We're 100% on the same page.
When you treat man as when you only evaluate it materially, then you say things like you talk about like us being wealthier now than ever in history, yet also talk about the complete degradation of buying power in the dollar. Yeah. Well, how do those things go together?
Exactly. Yeah.
When you're evaluating wealth purely in economic terms and ignoring entirely the fact that this is a wealth built entirely on debt. It's a usury society. So this wealth is all fleeting. It's all plastic. And what's been the cost of it? The cost of it has been the complete degradation of the family unit, the complete degradation of physical health, the complete degradation of the environment. This is why we've just consumed the seed corn of the future and called ourselves rich now. Yeah. And now we have absolute poverty ahead of us.
And this is why I get bent out of shape with the supposed kind of the new right fascists, because they think that they're going to fix these problems that they've correctly identified by implementing a system that's just as bad with these kind of communist ideas, right? Like, no, you've identified the problem. Let us fix it because we fucking know how. Yes. We know what the real fucking cause of the problem here is. Yes, you're absolutely right. We have a problem with moral degeneracy. Yes, we have a problem with this consumerist society, but it is not the result of private property rights. Private property rights didn't do this. Private property rights have only been degraded along with these other things, right?
Yes.
This is why as real libertarians, in my mind, we're so angry all the time, is because look at everything. You're all wrong in one way or another. Just listen to us, you know.
Yes. That reminds me of what's his name, Solab Amali. Have you guys heard of him?
Yeah.
He's on Tim Pool's show and he was dissecting all the problems. I was like, yes, this guy fucking gets it. Then he started talking about the solutions, and I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why are conservatives so good at identifying problems but only making things worse?
Yeah.
It sucks because they're so great when they spot a problem.
And this is why Hoppe talks about we have to be able to merge with these people on the right. And that's my whole strategy is I don't care about leftists or moderates. I don't care about them at all. But I can take somebody who understands the problems and I can teach them how those problems were created and they'll understand. I've converted more right-wingers to my, I guess, version of libertarianism than I have ever converted a leftist. And I'm not saying you can't convert a leftist. You absolutely can. But the effort you put in to convert them is 10 times as much. And if we're libertarians and we understand incentive structures and we understand return on investment, your investment in those leftists is way too high for very little return.
Yes. Yeah, my friend, a gold guy from UK, he converted his sister to anarchism. So he was a left-wing, like British socialist. It took him 6 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, you spent 6 years talking to her. Great, she agreed with you. Now you convinced her not to vote. You have accomplished nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't say it enough that we have to focus on our own group and we have to focus on the right. Screw the leftists, block them, get them out of the discussion. Get them out of the discussion. That it is not beneficial to us in any way to engage with them. Don't have them on podcasts. Don't go on their podcast. Don't talk to them. Ignore them. Pretend they don't exist. Get on the right-wing streams. Get in the right-wing groups. Start talking and start saying, hey, you guys understand the problem, but you don't understand the solution. Here's the solution. And explain to them why it's a solution. They're going to take that in. If they're not hardcore leftists in their own right, and there are plenty that pretend to be on the right that are leftists, 100%, there are 100% a lot of people that consider themselves right-wing who are in fact left-wing, and those people probably are not worth your time. But the people that are like, this is why I like Phil Bishop a lot, is because he understands this in many ways, is that your MAGA libertarians, the guys that understand the problems and they see the problems just as we do, but they don't have a strong philosophical foundation. If you can explain this stuff to them, they're going to be hardcore libertarians like us. And, for lack of a better word again, in no time. Right. So focus on those guys.
This is something I said a while ago. I said, people like to critique the paleo strategy a lot. And I had to explain to people, the conservatives you deal with on Twitter are not the people voting Republican and watching Sean Hannity.
Right.
These are not the same. The average guy watches Bill O'Reilly and he doesn't read book. You don't need to worry about these people. People who read book are not the ones you really care about because they're not good anyway.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Oh, this is going great. One thing I have two things I want to get into and to see where it goes. What we've been going off and on about the left libertarians and these, I call them BDLs, basement dwelling libertarians. Because I really hate the term regime libertarian because it makes them feel like they're part of something that gives them power. And I fucking hate that term. I want to insult them, so I prefer BDLs. What is something the not left, not right centrist libertarians miss? Like, what is the biggest things they don't understand about the actual ideas of like true libertarianism,
if you're going to break it down, they don't understand property rights. Number one, they don't understand where property rights come from. They don't understand where, like we were saying, I was saying, they don't understand the dichotomy of equality and hierarchy, and why egalitarianism is so terrible. Why it creates everything that is wrong with society in many ways. And if you
everyone go read this book,
read the book that Caleb's holding up right now, Egalitarianism is Revolt Against Nature. Everybody needs to read that book. If you understand that book, if you understand that egalitarianism is such a problem, you will understand why the left-right divide is important and why we are definitely on one side of this. And anybody that's saying it's not, anybody that says that is a subversive or an idiot, plain and simple.
That include Walter Block?
Oh, God, man, why do you have to ask that? I love Walter. I really do love Walter Block. I've communicated with him in email. He's a very good person. Yeah. And if I had to bring a left, I don't consider him a leftist. I think he's just mistaken on some things. And if I were to bring anybody from that divide into my covenant community, it would be Walter Block, because he's a good dude.
Well, I post a lot of memes about Walter because I find evictivism to be the funniest idea ever. Like, I posted a photo of him smiling, and it said, "When the fetus doesn't pay rent." And it's just he is. I love Walter Block. He has some of my favorite books. I love reading him, but at the same time, it's like that abortion stuff is so.
It's cringe.
It's the most Jewish shit I've ever had in my life.
I was just gonna fucking say that.
It is. I have to admit. So I want to point out a comment from
the Jews were the original autists.
You ever read a Talmud? That's what exactly what it is.
Literally all it is.
Bunch of anal retentive freaks.
I want to point out that last comment from Jonathan Hemingway. Consumerism is also a symptom of fiat currency. And that's exactly to what we were talking about, is the Fed creates this, right? It is incentivizing the consumerist behavior by destroying savings, right? So if you can't save and you want to be able to get what you need now and you want to enjoy those frivolities now, then saving is destroyed, and as a result, you end up spending more now than you would later. It is super important, if you're a libertarian, to find a way to store your money, even if it's, I hate to say it, but even if it's in a bank, save. If you understand cryptocurrency, if you understand the metals market, if you understand any other means of storing your value, do that. But saving is critical and important to who we are and what we do.
Yeah. No, the whole federal, this is one of my points I try to bring up with conservatives. They want to, the Matt Walsh types, they'll literally make fun of you bringing up the Federal Reserve. Like the people he was tweeting about culture, and people were like, this is all a result of the Federal Reserve and the degeneracy that it caused. And he's like, I'm talking about family structures being destroyed. I got libertarians go, oh, but the Federal Reserve. And I'm like, yes, you're not. Yep. I like Matt Walsh, but he's so like, how do I put this? Ball. He is a basic ball bits.
Yeah.
It's just like he won't engage with anything that can act like he's too midwit. If he's just a little bit smarter, he could trace it back. It'd be great. It's
the same problem with the hardcore, supposedly kind of right-wing fascist group, is they've identified the problem, but they don't know how to fix it. And some of them don't care to learn, and they won't care to learn. And we have to learn how to either break through to them or just ignore them.
Yeah. Here's my problem with the end the Fed libertarians is, great. Yeah, the Fed is responsible for a lot of this stuff, but it's actually the Fed isn't responsible for it. The Fed is the tool that's been used to make it happen.
Yeah.
But it's people who are responsible for it.
Correct.
It's individual people who function according to incentive structures, and they'll use whatever tool is available to them. So if you were to get rid of the Fed, if you were to end the Fed, they would create a new institution. They're actually in the process of ending the Fed themselves because they're no longer going to need it. And if you attack the Fed, you're actually accelerating their process for them. You're facilitating what they're trying to accomplish. It's like, I think Monica Perez said on Pete Quinones recently, she said, when you try to destroy the state, the result of that is not going to be like anarcho-capitalism. It's going to be global government.
Yeah.
This is part of when you position yourself as the opponents of the regime, that you are attacking the regime and you are attempting to take out the institutions of the regime explicitly. When that's your focus, you actually become a pawn of the regime.
Yes.
Because the nature of the regime is that it takes opposition to it and alchemically converts that into power.
Yep.
It's one of the most brilliant machines that's ever been created. It's the best mind control device of all time.
Yep.
But it only exists when it has people directly in opposition to it. So if the goal is actually to move beyond it in any sense, or to recover any aspect of our society, or to create any new society, it has to be done apart from the regime. It has to be done in parallel to the regime.
Yes.
Just treating the regime as a constant, it's going to be there. It's always going to be there in some form or another. And there's always going to be people who are beholden to it. There's always going to be craven evil in the world. But we have to create our own thing that is separate and protected from that. And whatever that means, we've just created we've just defined what our ultimate goal is. Now we have to go about engineering that.
Yeah. And I think that 100%, there's 2 points there I want to hit real quick. Is one point is libertarians don't understand that there is evil in the world outside of the state. That's a major problem for libertarians. There's definitely evil outside of the state. And then 2 is, don't give them a target. Stop giving them a target. don't let them think of yourself as like the carny the booth where you shoot the metal ducks with the BB gun or whatever. Like, don't be a one big duck. You want to be 50 ducks that you can't hit with one bullet, right? Like that should be extremely clear to people. And I think too, like, I hate all of these God, I hate all of these people who just want to repeat platitudes. Will you people shut the fuck up? Like, I hate you. Like, I literally, I just hate you. Like, stop. Like, stop repeating all these platitudes. You're not doing anything. You're literally just pissing the people off who understand more than you. That's all you're doing.
There's nothing I hate more than someone stating a basic fucking fact like it's a profound ideal.
Yeah.
We've all read Anatomy of the State. You ain't got to quote it to me every 5 fucking seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, and it's such a pervade. Like, if we're just gonna talk about libertarian problems, which is kind of what we talked about a lot during
every
the podcast
with Matt devolves into libertarian problem solving. A problem is sit posting. Every podcast with Matt.
but I mean, like, libertarian, like, if I can name off a bunch of problems. So one thing that also really pisses me off is the libertarian simp problem. We have a bad libertarian simp problem. Stop following libertarian women simply because they're libertarian women and they're repeating these platitudes.
Don't follow women.
Don't follow women. If you can't discern the difference, then just don't follow women, because you're giving them a voice, and then as a result, you are incentivizing a power structure that will end up killing people who do know what they're talking about. You're giving power to someone who doesn't understand enough of this stuff. And then as a result, someone says something important like Matt said or what I said, and then these libertarian women are going to come in and say the individual is always superior to the group. And it's like,
where's the OnlyFans?
And then they destroy us because all the simps come in and report us or try and get onto us or follow us to troll us and things like that. Stop giving those people power.
The only woman you should follow is Kerry Baldwin of at Mere Liberty. That's the only one. She's the one who debated what to block on abortion. She's the only one to follow.
There are I will say this: there are a few libertarian women who I do respect. One of them is Ilana Mercer. I don't know if you guys know who Ilana Mercer is. She's a paleo libertarian from way back. I mean, she held the line when paleo libertarianism didn't exist anymore, and she was basically the only one left. She's hardcore. She's the real freaking deal. And then you can also follow Mac, who's our social media person for hopping.org.
Let's see if there's any more. Who's that Ross Bird again? The one who got kicked out? He got kicked out of the LP of Massachusetts, I think it was.
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
Fat trans bits. That was, she's acceptable.
Yeah. And like I said, like, it's not just about them being libertarian women, but it is a point to say, just stop following them because they're libertarian women, right? Yes. That is not like the guy, like Vigenti Trace in the chat says, retweet if you believe taxation is theft. I despise that. We should report those people. Just report them. Get them off of Twitter. Stop.
I agree.
I
agree.
Here's another one of those that just absolutely chaps my ass. And I actually got into a little. I don't want to necessarily call out people specifically by name. So if you know who posted this, then I guess you are aware of the inside nature of the joke. But there was a meme posted recently. It said, if you need violence to enforce your ideas are worthless.
Oh my God.
My response to that is, what an odd rejection of the concept of property.
Yeah, exactly. And self-defense.
Because property is great. Property is, by definition, a property claim is a signal to people of the line at which, if they cross it, you will engage in violence against them.
Exactly.
Violence. All property is rooted in violence.
Violence is not wrong, and this is why Rothbard was so intelligent when he like, as much as it's awful that people abuse the shit out of this, but the non-aggression principle, not the non-violence principle. Can you guys get this through your head? Like, we are not pacifists. I will fuck you up if you try and rob me. Right? Yes. I don't give a fuck about you. You're trying to rob me and hurt me and steal the store of value and time that I've put my life into. I'm not going to let you do that. I will fuck you up. right? Like we are not nonviolent. We are non-aggressive, meaning that we're not going to go onto other people's property and do what they don't want them to do to us, right? So that platitude is so infuriating.
But so here's an area where I think that we did a stream on King Pill the other day. We called it the post-nap libertarian question, and I think that on one you could just throw out the nap and say the nap is bullshit, which I'd be fine with. But I think that aggression, the definition of aggression, needs to be updated, and I think it needs to be mysticized. It needs to have some of the mystical put into it rather than it being a purely material term, because promoting degeneracy in my society negatively compromises compromises my actual property. It compromises social bonds. It weakens and degrades the society. But technically, it's not aggression. So somebody trying to propagandize my kids with bullshit degeneracy, that could be considered aggression. I think that there needs to be some some means by which you can incorporate that and treat political aggression as aggression.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Cultural aggression.
I despise these people that think that in a libertarian, like, they get so pissed off at Hoppe because he said you can physically remove these people, right?
Yes.
You can physically remove them because it is an aggression against you in many ways. Anybody that would seek to establish any kind of egalitarianism or democratic order is a threat in and of themselves.
Yeah.
So it's totally reasonable to say you need to get the fuck out of here, right? Like, if you're trying to teach my kids about sex at 4 years old, I'm going to punch you in the fucking face. Like,
yes.
I have absolutely no problem with that. And the libertarians that you need to reevaluate yourself. Like there's clearly a problem here. If we identify that this is a problem, let's work backwards and see why you think it's not just spewing platitudes, you know?
And to the pure libertarian people who like freak out about this, like the way I put like the what's it called? Drag queen story hour, for example.
Oh yeah.
Like that, I would say that is a straight up aggression on kids. And they make an argument using libertarian principles that we believe in sound pollution and noise pollution. I would say this is like a sight thing, you know?
Oh,
You don't have the right, like if you walk around bare-ass naked in public, if you walk around bare-ass naked in public, you are offensive to my eyes and assaulting my eyes. Yeah. I can make an argument on libertarian principles that those people are aggressing the children.
And this is exactly why libertarians fail to like me and Matt were talking about earlier, of applying libertarian principles inside of a libertarian reality, right? In a libertarian reality, that is not going to happen. That only happens in an elite neoliberal global order. Right? That is not going to happen in your feudal land where you and your family and 18 other families are all living together. It's not going to happen. Those people are going to get expelled. They're not going to live with
it is the technical term.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I just
another thing would be usury. So lending money at interest can be something that's completely voluntary, but it's absolutely catastrophic to the well-being of the society, and it's ultimately destructive to people's property. These are all things that would technically, according to most people's working definition of the NAP, be not covered under the would be this is voluntary. You have to deal with this on a political basis.
Yeah, and Hoppe talks about
that's a non-starter.
Yeah. I mean, and Hoppe talks about this. You're gonna end up with these different little polities that have all these different rules, and if you don't like them, fucking leave. Like, too fucking bad, leave, right? Like, it's fine. That's good that there is that diversity and that difference. And you don't want those people crossing borders, because the moment that you do and you start interacting with them, you get, again, the neoliberal global order, and you have all the problems that come along with it, which is why he makes a really good case for free trade and restricted immigration. That you can trade with the gay community, 6 miles away that's doing their own thing, and the guy has to come. And if he wants to trade with us, he needs to wear clothes and not touch kids or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's fine, and we can trade and we can interact and we can be friendly and do all of that. It doesn't mean he has to come and live with you in your home. Why do libertarians not understand this? It doesn't mean that they want to think of, like, again, they want to think about everything as it is now. It is not how it is now. It is not.
I had a tweet the other day that like the problem with libertarianism is they're trying to apply the like praxis and unlibertarian society. They're philosophizing midstream. Looking at society, going, okay, well, how do I like? You don't look at A and think, how do I get to A by living out A and B? You don't. It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
like
100%.
If your goal is to get this, Pete Quinones says, stop living in Capistan in your head. If your goal is to get to this point, if you should be judged on your actual consequences, not on your intentions. The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Absolutely,
everyone has good intentions. Even the worst tyrants of the world all had good intentions.
Yes,
you have to be judged on the actual effects of your actions. And if you're somebody who has a praxis for your life that results in the opposite of your intended outcomes, then you can't call yourself consistent.
Yeah.
You can maybe you're consistently incompetent or you're consistently self-defeating.
Yeah.
But you're not consistent. You're not principled.
And what do you like? I'm going to ask you guys this as a serious question. It may not sound serious, but it is absolutely a serious question. Would you rather live in Ancapistan where you've got 55 different groups of people living with you and together, or would you rather live in a more, I guess I would say, quote unquote, authoritarian society that's much smaller and in group and separated?
In group.
The latter.
Yeah. And if you're a libertarian, I don't see how you can respond with anything other than that. And this is something there's not really a we can get there through libertarian principles to understand this, but there's not really a logical test at the moment. And I think the first person to come up with that logical test is going to be seen as the person that has evolved the ideology. I can't express enough that this idea of this centralized kind of neoliberal ANCAP convergence is not where we're going. That's not where we want to be.
One of our goals with King Pilled is to rehabilitate the term authoritarian. I think that authoritarian is not only is authoritarian and libertarian not indivisible from each other, or not only are they what is the word?
They're complementary and necessary.
They're necessary. Yes.
Yeah.
A libertarian society would be extremely authoritarian.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because how do you enforce your property rights? How do you with authority? Like
Yeah,
you said
just
earlier,
authority.
people
Just
who violate
authority.
people who violate the principles of that, or the people who violate the rules of that society are going to be cast out. And you know who's going to cast them out? Rulers.
Exactly.
There is going to be rulers in a libertarian society. The rulers are the ones who enforce the rules.
This is why I don't like the idea of the term anarchist, right?
Yeah.
It's not that we're no rulers. We're against artificial rulers. We're against artificial constructs of order. We're against artificial hierarchies. And the natural ones, we're totally fine with. Right? We're fine with the family. We're fine with these group orders. We're fine with those things as long as they're not inherently aggressive and as long as they're not infringing on the property rights of others, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you've got all these different feudal orders, right? These feudal groups, and you've got one that is a Nobunaga who's trying to centralize them all, then that guy is an inherent threat and you can kill his fucking ass, right? Like flat out. Yeah. Like if you're a Nobunaga or you're what was the guy that did that in Germany? He did the same thing. He kind of got rid of property rights and tried to centralize all those guys. I can't remember. Or you could say I think Cromwell was the one in England who did that. So like if those guys are inherently aggressive, they're terrible people and they're gonna get fucked up, and they should be, right? But other than that, leave people the fuck alone, right? Like we're going to do our own thing over here and we're going to have our own little, like, no gods, no rulers. Oh my God, I'm going to kill myself.
Keep it up, guys. Keep it up.
Yeah. Like we
keep triggering him.
God is fine. Rulers are fine. It's just whether or not that they're just rulers in natural hierarchies or not. If they're not, then they're a problem and they're egalitarian. But yeah, I want to point out one of these comments Clownarchist put up earlier. He said, Loberts apply ideology to reality, but often fail to apply reality to their ideals. I think that's a beautiful quote. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I have only one more question, and to see what kind of goes from there. I know Matt is looking into Eastern Orthodoxy. I know Jared is doing a little bit of Eastern Orthodoxy research, and I want to ask you guys why you're such, leftist for looking into Orthodoxy. Here's what I'm saying. Orthodoxy doesn't have a centralized ruler. There's no pure authority in that. Catholicism has a pope. So if you like monarchy, Catholics are the better answer.
But I've got an answer for this because Colton, Mr. AC Anderson on Twitter, he's an Orthodox guy. He's the friend that gave me the Orthodox Study Bible. He said that actually the Orthodox Church is much more libertarian and natural hierarchical because they are decentralized and they do have their own groups and they are allowed to make their own decisions.
Yeah, autocephaly. Yeah.
That's
what I was going to say. Again, it's not any hierarchy. It's natural hierarchy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I can't.
They're actually it's rigidly hierarchical. It's very
100%.
very hierarchical, and the nature of the hierarchy is such that it demands skin in the game. You have to be it's experiential. You can't just go get a degree and then be qualified for a position of leadership. It has to be evident in your behavior, in your life. You have to have dedicated and devoted yourself in order to ascend to various levels of leadership, which is a natural hierarchy.
Yep. Man, see, I don't know if you thought so, Matt, but I think we're so close together. We're definitely on the same page. I mean, it's good to hear other people say what I've said for so long. I don't know about you, but like I've been in this game for a long time, like, pre 2008, like before then.
That's longer than me.
Yeah, like a long time. And it's then, if you're anywhere close to that kind of timeline, you understand just how leftist and how terrible it's been for right wingers in the libertarian sphere for so long. It's been so terrible. Like, my God, I remember when there was like 4 people on Twitter that were right wing libertarians and we were fighting everyone. And I actually earned a pretty good following at one point. And then, of course, the lowbirds come after you and you get banned and, you have to start over. But it is what it is. Yeah. So I'm glad to see. I'm glad to see it. I'm glad we had a chance to talk.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah, I'm new to this. I joined the Libertarian Party with Jorgensen like a year ago, and so like I don't really have any metric for determining the what it was like before I showed up here. But you guys make it sound like fucking terrible.
Oh, it was bad, dude. It was really bad. Like the collapse of the paleo movement and the post 2012 era after Ron Paul. In the aftermath of that, the libertarian sphere as a whole kind of collapsed. And I don't blame Ron Paul for this. This is not his fault. I love Ron Paul, but in the post 2012 era, during the 2012 era, there was this push to bring leftists into kind of the libertarian moment in order to get more votes for Ron Paul. And just as we were talking about, the same exact thing happens. And then they came in and then they all went left anarchist and they stayed in libertarian spheres and libertarian circles. And they kind of won the culture war in libertarianism. And we were almost wiped out. And now we're back and we're not going anywhere.
Nice. Okay, well, guys, let's give you plugs, I guess, and we'll get out of here.
You could follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled and on YouTube at KingPilled, and we're on basically all the podcatchers now. I'm working through getting episodes uploaded. We have a pretty extensive backlog, so we'll have all of them uploaded here eventually. But those are the best places. And then the one other thing I would mention is I also do a podcast with Jason Stapleton called Wealth, Power, and Influence, and we talk a lot more about behavioral economics and crypto and entrepreneurship, marketing, persuasion, all those sorts of things there. But we get into some libertarian philosophy and stuff as well. So I'd recommend that podcast. And then part of that, we created, thank you, man. As part of that, we created our own social community. It's called the Nomad Network, and it's for liberty-minded entrepreneurs who are in the business of creating their own liberty rather than sitting around waiting for somebody else to give it to them. And if that's appealing to you, there's different membership tiers there, and there's a whole bunch of extra content, and it's very rapidly growing, and it's a phenomenal, very positive, uplifting, professional community. So if that's something that would interest you, then go to controlthesource.com and you can sign up and join there.
Awesome. I'm Jared at InDemocracy on Twitter. Don't follow me. I tell everybody this. Don't follow me. I'll probably block you. Just as being straight up. Follow at The Hoppian, though. We're trying to do good work there. It's an evolution, guys. I know we haven't posted new articles in a while. We're going to get back to that. We have a huge backlog of articles to publish. We will get back to that soon. We're going to be expanding thehoppian.org. Probably going to have some kind of kind of like the Mises Wire kind of thing, and then we also may end up bridging into events if we can get some more income coming in.
fun.
So if you guys are interested in that, follow at the Hoppian or check out Hoppian.org. We're on all the social media platforms. Just search Hoppian, you'll find us. And stay right wing.
Oh yeah. Okay, guys. Well, this is a Catholic Libertarian podcast. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. We got a bunch of guests coming up. I got Bishop, Saudi Agawes, Andrew from Popular Liberty, Thomas De Lorenzo. I got the shit coming up. You guys better subscribe and hit the notification bell because it's going to be amazing. Anyway, like Jared said, stay right wing. Read Hopper, read Yarvin.